And here we go, everybody. Another edition of Jamal About Sports coming to you on a Monday, April 27th, 2026. As always, I'm your host, Jamal Hayden. We've got a big show to get to. We've got Major League Baseball, where a shocking managerial move took place over the weekend. Perhaps a not-so-shocking managerial move will happen soon as the Mets continue to be a complete and unmitigated disaster. We've got NFL draft recap. We'll get into a bit of what the Lions did. Some other teams I thought had some really good drafts. But we start in the NBA with the Knicks and a huge, huge bounce-back game on Saturday in a game they had to have. Thoroughly dispatching with the Hawks in, again, a game they had to have. I mean, they lost that game. They're going to be down 3-1. AG and I were on here last week, and that was after the Knicks lost game 2 in a game they blew where they had a large lead at home. Talked about the whole C.J. McCollum thing, silliness of the Garden fans, etc. And then they went on the road on Thursday, the first game in Atlanta, and sleptwalked through the first 3 quarters of that game. I mean, they were nowhere to be found. I don't know what they were doing. They looked like they were stuck in the mud most of that game. The Hawks pretty much did whatever they wanted on both ends of the floor. And then finally the Knicks came alive, actually took a lead late, gave it up. But we're down 1 with 7 seconds left, plenty of time to get off a good shot, and the Knicks don't even get off a shot. You got Brunson dribbling around aimlessly, continuing this disturbing trend of trying to play hero ball and turn the ball over. After getting the ball stripped again late in that game 2, not shooting it well. And look, I'm a huge Jalen Brunson guy. I was way out in front of Jalen Brunson. I said on a podcast, the year he got drafted, he'd have a better NBA career than Trae Young. So I'm a big Jalen Brunson guy. But we got to be honest, he's not played well this series at all. Other than an incredibly hot start in game 1, he's shot the ball poorly. He has not gotten his teammates involved. We know about his issues on defense. So this has been a rough series for him. And we knew it was going to be a rough series, but I didn't expect it to be this rough. But the good news, and it begs the question, where has this been? But in Saturday's game, when the Knicks had to have it to even the series at 2-2, you don't want to go down 3-1, obviously. Karl-Anthony Towns was spectacular. OG Anunoby, spectacular. Josh Hart on the defensive end, spectacular, and made some extremely important baskets when the game was still in the balance in the first half. And they ran the offense kind of through Towns, that high post. We've been clamoring, Knicks fans have been clamoring for this all season long. And lo and behold, Cat has a 20-10-10 game. 20 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists. A lot of those assists were to OG on back cuts and just easy dunks. OG made 3 of 6 from 3. Hart's defense on McCollum and on Jalen Johnson was spectacular. Jose Alvarado came off the bench and gave them some very good minutes with a huge steal off an inbounds pass, made 2 threes, was a general and overall irritant, which is what he's supposed to do. He gave him good minutes. Deuce McBride finally showed up. He gave him good minutes. He made 3 threes. And Brunson, honestly, again, did not play very well. 7 for 19, 6 turnovers, only 3 assists. Not a great game from him. And you even saw it with he and his dad, Rick Brunson, former Knick backup point guard, who's been an assistant, started out as an assistant with Tibbs, came over basically from Dallas when the Knicks signed Brunson. They got into it. And I'm pretty sure what Rick Brunson was telling his son was, hey, knock it off with the hero ball. I mean, it's got to stop. It's just, you know, you're better than this. I mean, we know he's better than this. And look, give Atlanta credit. They've done a good job frustrating him, but he's too good a player to continue to go down this path. I mean, he just, again, trust your guys. Now, look, Mikal Bridges, I just don't even know what to say. I'm at a loss. I just throw my hands up with Mikal Bridges at this point. No points in Game 3, 4 turnovers in 21 minutes, was benched the whole fourth quarter, and rightfully so. And then he was okay Saturday night. He had 8 points on 3 for 4 shooting, but he also was nowhere to be found down the stretch because McBride was actually playing well. But Bridges also had some blown assignments on defense. Again, if Mikal, and this is not to take anything away from C.J. McCollum. I talked about it last week on the show. C.J. McCollum is an accomplished player in this league, 14-year veteran, averaged about 20 points a game for his career. But he's also 34 years old, and he's 6'4". Mikal Bridges is 6'6", long arms, wiry, supposed to be Mr. Defense. And there were far too many occasions in that game Saturday night where McCollum just flat out beat him. It wasn't even that he got picked. He just got beat off the dribble. There were a couple of times where he did get picked and he went underneath the screen, which you're not supposed to do. You got to fight over the screen. And I think Mike Brown just frankly had seen enough and took him out. And so I say all of this because, okay, series is tied 2-2. The general consensus is the Knicks are the better team than the Hawks. Well, they're only the better team if they're going to get games like they got from Cat and OG. And you would think Brunson will play better, but this just may be one of those series where Atlanta's defense, particularly Dyson Daniels, is so frustrating that he's just never going to, find it in this series. But again, he should be able to do other things. He doesn't have to be the lead dog from a scoring perspective. That was the whole point of bringing Towns in here to begin with, and supposedly Bridges, right? Because they got OG before Bridges and Towns, right? Towns and Bridges were supposed to be the final 2 pieces of the puzzle, right? We know what Hart is. Hart is a glue guy. He's an energy guy. He can guard multiple positions. He's probably the best rebounding guard in the league. He's certainly the best rebounder in the league under 6'5". Now, he's very streaky with the three-point shot, although this year he shot it from 3 very well. I think it was about 40%. But he's not shot it well in the playoffs in this series so far. And you see that he's hesitant, although he did make a big 3 Saturday night, again, when the game was still in the balance. But scoring is not really his thing. He can have a game of 20 points here and there, but that's not what you're looking for Josh Hart to do. Josh Hart gets a rebound, pushes the ball up the floor, instant offense that way, knock down some open threes, take the ball to the basket, draw fouls. That's what he's there to do. He's in that lineup of Hart, Bridges, Towns, OG, and Brunson, he should be your 5th option. But because Bridges has been completely out to lunch, now Hart is your 4th option, which, again, you can live with if you get somebody who comes off the bench, Deuce, maybe Jordan Clarkson, who can give you some scoring punch. But I also like what Mike Brown did. No Landry Shamet in that game on Saturday until garbage time. Mitch obviously played. Gave you some big offensive rebounds early in the game. Wasn't his best game, but it wasn't a terrible game. And obviously, look, the Knicks pretty much led wire to wire, right? They were down early. They took a lead early in the first quarter and pretty much led wire to wire. And they got the lead up to 20. When Atlanta cut it down to 16, the Knicks then extended it back to 18, 19. So they never really let Atlanta get comfortable, get any momentum going, really get into any sort of striking distance where, as a Knicks fan, you felt uncomfortable. It was a comfortable win, which that's what Game 2 should have been also. And the Knicks should be up 3-1 in this series. Because, look, as frustrating as that game was Thursday night, it's understandable. It's the first game in Atlanta. Although, look, Atlanta has no home court advantage. There's none. In fact, I think it's better for the Knicks to play in Atlanta. Half the stadium is Knicks fans anyway. Atlanta is notorious, terrible sports town. It's a terrible sports town. They have no significant fan base there whatsoever. The Braves, for crying out loud, in the 90s, when they had the Smoltz, Glavine, Maddox teams, they had playoff games where they didn't even sell out. So Atlanta is not a good sports town. I gave the Garden crowd a little bit of a hard time on last week. We know New York is a legit sports town, obviously. Atlanta is not. So it's good when the Knicks play in Atlanta. And as we said last week, I don't think the Knicks have much of a home court advantage in the Garden. So they should be up 3-1. It's 2-2. Come back to the Garden tomorrow. More of the same. Look, Quinn Snyder, the Hawks coach, is a good coach, smart guy, went to Duke, played at Duke. He'll probably make some adjustments. Mike Brown's got to make some more adjustments again, more than likely. But keep doing what you did in Game 4. That should be the blueprint. Let the offense run through Cat. You saw how patient Cat was. He didn't force the issue. He got called for a couple of, I thought, iffy offensive fouls, but he wasn't forcing the issue. He took one bad three. Other than that, all of his shots were in rhythm. I mean, he shot at a high percentage. Again, the passing was exquisite, and we've been saying this for a while. He is a good passer. Give him the opportunity to do that. And when you get games like this from OG, AG, and I talked about it last week, he's a frustrating player because you get games like you got Saturday night where he looks like the best finisher in the league around the rim, where he's going up amongst the trees and just dunking on dudes. I mean, Jalen Johnson is legit like 6'8", 6'9" with long arms. And OG, he had no answers for OG. So he was spectacular. And he played great. It got lost because the Knicks lost in Game 3. But OG played great in that game, too. He was the best player on the floor for the Knicks. So more of the same. And you hope Brunson finds it a little bit, right? And look, he's probably playing hurt. He got banged up a bunch during the season. He'll never say it, right? It's one of the reasons why you love him. The guy never makes excuses. He's accountable. I mean, he's everything you want in a superstar player, lead dog on your team in the NBA. Everything you want. But something just looks a little off right now with him. Even his attitude. He seems a little annoyed. I'm not exactly sure what it is. Can't put my finger on it. But if you get a really good Brunson game, and you get games like that from Cat and OG, the Knicks can beat anybody. And again, you get the other guys sprinkling in, Hart with his 11 rebounds and 6 assists and 10 points or whatever it was the other night. No, sorry, I think it was 10 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists, something like that. And excellent defense. Again, set the tone, right? The Knicks got up and into C.J. McCollum. He had 17 points, but he'd been averaging 25? And he shot at a good percentage, but he didn't get that many shots. The Knicks picked up pressure full court. They picked guys up at half court. They forced the Hawks into, I think, 20 turnovers. It's the best defensive game the Knicks have played all season. What the Hawks score? 84 points, something like that? Let's take a quick look. Saturday, 98 points. Okay, in today's NBA, you hold a team under 100 points. You're doing an excellent job. So, listen, kudos to Mike Brown. Made some adjustments, made some tweaks. There was talk he was going to maybe tweak the starting lineup. Look, at this stage of the game, even as badly as Mikal Bridges has played, you just stick with the starting lineup. That's fine. It's not about who starts the game. It's about who finishes. And again, Bridges was on the bench to finish that game on Saturday night. So, give Brown credit. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Give him credit. He did a good job. Made some adjustments. We gave him a hard time after Game 2. And I didn't think he did a very good job in Game 3 either, particularly in that last possession. I mean, yes, Brunson kind of dribbled into a crowd, but the Knicks didn't look like they had much of a play set up there. Didn't look like they had much of a plan. But a really strong bounce back performance from everybody associated with the Knicks, from the coach all the way around. And again, maybe it's a good sign that they won by 16 points, led by double digits pretty much the entire game, and their best player, and Jalen Brunson, didn't really have a very strong game by his standards. I mean, he still finished with 17 points. He hit a big three there in the second quarter towards the end of the first half when the Knicks started to extend the lead. But again, by his standards, not a vintage Jalen Brunson performance whatsoever. All right, we'll go around the rest of the league. So some interesting developments here with the Magic and the Pistons. So the Magic were in the play-in. They lost their first game and looked absolutely horrendous in doing so. Then they, for whatever reason, these silly rules of this play-in, they got a chance to play again. They won. They got in as the 8th seed. And they're now up 2-1 against the Pistons, who were the darlings of the NBA regular season in the East. Cade Cunningham's the MVP. Jalen Duren's most improved player. This team is a juggernaut now. J.B. Bickerstaff, what a great coach. And now they're down 2-1. They've looked really bad in the 2 losses against the Magic. A team who, by all accounts, underachieved during the regular season. Yes, they had injuries, especially with Wagner being hurt. Paolo Banchero, who, again, because this is what we do in sports, but particularly in the NBA, everybody wanted to anoint as the next great superstar in the league, looked awful in the first game, in that play-in game, has bounced back and played very well. Jalen Duren is getting his ass kicked in by Wendell Carter Jr., of all people, on the Magic. And they play tonight, pretty much a must-win for the Pistons. So that bears watching. The Spurs-Portland series has been interesting in so much that Portland shouldn't even be there, right? Remember, Chauncey Billups, Portland's coach, got suspended at the beginning of the year because he got caught up in the big gambling scandal. They then inserted Thiago Splitter, a guy played in the NBA many moons ago as a bench player, as the head coach. And they went on a late season run. They've got Denny Avia, who's he's one of the true up-and-coming stars in the NBA. Guy can give you a triple-double, an extremely multi-talented player, can shoot it, can pass it, can rebound, can drive. Really doesn't have much of a weakness to his game. By the way, Knicks could have had him. They took Obi Toppin instead. And was on the Wizards, but since the Wizards have spent the last 5 years having no interest in winning, they traded him to Portland. Portland happily took him. He's been playing great. Drew Holiday has gone into the Wayback Machine and has played very well in this series. They've given the Spurs a fight. Now, the Spurs' overall talent has been shown through here in the second half of these games. The other night, in particular, where Spurs were down 15 at halftime, came back and won by 16, and held Portland to 35 points in the second half. Wembanyama, after missing one game with a concussion, was an absolute monster with 7 blocks. Let's see. I mean, his stat line last night, they won 114-93. Wembanyama, 27 points on 9 for 17 shooting, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, and 4 steals and 7 blocks. I mean, hard to argue with. He is a beast. He is a force. But look, I'm not going to try. Well, I am. I'm going to pat myself on the back. Anybody's been following this show now this year? Spurs were my sleeper pick in the West. I did admit that it was a bit of a cheat because they didn't have Wembanyama for all of last year, but nobody expected him to be this good. I've talked at length about the depth of that roster, and you saw it in the game that Wembanyama didn't play. They still won. De'Aaron Fox, Devin Vassell, Stephon Castle, Harrison Barnes off the bench, Keldon Johnson off the bench, Dylan Harper off the bench, Luke Cornett, off the bench, and started in Wembanyama's place and gave them like 10 points and 8 rebounds. Champagne. I mean, it's a really Carter Bryant. I mean, it is a deep, deep team. They and OKC look like clearly the class of the Western Conference right now. I mean, it looks like we're inevitably headed for an OKC San Antonio Western Conference Finals, and I'm here for it. That would be fantastic. They're the two best teams, they're the two most exciting teams, although OKC has become a bit of a villain now with the way SGA gets every foul call in his favor, and with the way that the Oklahoma City Thunder in general get away with fouling the other team and don't get called for it. But I think, given the youth of both rosters and the idea that they're going to be around for a while and they'll be going back and forth at each other, that'll be a very, very entertaining series, assuming I can stay up for any of the games. But look, give Portland a lot of credit. I mean, they've been feisty in this series. They've been competitive. They've won a game. They've got a good young nucleus as well. Scoot Henderson, who was hurt most of the year, came back, had some big games for them in the playoffs so far. So they've got a decent young core there as well. In the East, the Celtics lost one game to the Sixers, and in that game, Joel Embiid didn't even play. This is what the Celtics do. They're going to give you a stinker in every series. Usually it's because they jack up 55 threes and they don't make many of them. But the Sixers are not a serious contender. They got Embiid back the other night, and he didn't even play. He played okay, but they got nothing from Edgecombe. They got nothing from, I think Maxey also had a bad game. Let's take a quick look at that one. That was last night also. Yeah, they got blown out by 30 points. Pathetic. Just a pathetic effort by the Sixers. Embiid had 26 points, but on 9 for 21 and 1 for 6 from 3. Kelly Oubre Jr. gave him nothing, 0 for 6, 2 points. Maxey had a good game at 22 points. Edgecombe gave him nothing at 6 points, 2 for 9 shooting. And they got very little from their bench. The only guy who did anything was Quentin Grimes, my guy, 12 points, 5 for 7. And Paul George was okay, 16 points on 6 for 13. But Tatum had a great game with 30. Brown had 20. And then they let Peyton Pritchard go off for 32 points. So there you go. I don't know what to make of the Sixers. Just when you think they're completely dead, they win a game that nobody thinks they're going to win. And then when you think, okay, they're getting Embiid back tonight, they lay a complete egg last night. Dreadful performance. And then the Rockets, facing elimination, came back last night and beat the Lakers. That's been a bizarre series. The Lakers, no Luka, no Austin Reeves. They're starting Luke Kennard, for crying out loud, and Marcus Smart. And those guys have both had 20-plus point games in this series. I understand Durant didn't play in the first couple of games for Houston, but Houston's supposed to have guys like Kamara and Smith and these guys and one of the Thompson twins, who are these, similar to the Hawks, like Jalen Johnson and Walker Alexander and Dyson Daniels. These young, athletic, long, defensive-oriented type players. And yet they're letting the likes of Luke Kennard go off on them. And Luke Kennard, by the way, couldn't guard me. And finally, last night, Houston started going after him. And you saw the results. You got, let's look at the box score. I mean, Thompson, is that Asor or Amen? That's Amen Thompson. Asor is on the Pistons. Amen Thompson, 23 points on 10 for 16. Eason, 20 points. I said Kamara, that's the guy on Portland. I get those guys confused. Tari Eason had 20 points on 7 for 10. And then Alperen Sengun had 19 points. He's a really good player. Reed Shepherd had 17 on 6 for 12. I mean, look, the Lakers played poorly. I mean, LeBron, 10 points on 2 for 9 and 8 turnovers. I mean, yuck. That's pretty bad. But, they held Luke Kennard to 7 points and Marcus Smart to 9 points. I mean, that's what those guys should probably be doing. I mean, look at this starting lineup for the Lakers. LeBron James, okay. I mean, enough said. Rui Hachimura, DeAndre Ayton, Marcus Smart, and Luke Kennard. And they're up 3-1 in this series. And I like, by the way, what Emeka Udoka, the Rockets coach, said about his team. I think it was after either game 1 or game 2. It was game 2. They were up 6 with 30 seconds left. They blew the game. The game went to overtime. LeBron hit a 3 to tie it. Then they lost in overtime. And he said, this team has to grow up. Has to grow up. I'm tired of hearing about how we're young. Got to grow up. I mean, that was a brutal loss, that game, where they lost. So, do the Rockets have a Red Sox-like 2024 down 3-0 comeback in them against what everybody seems to think, and rightfully so, is a very vulnerable Lakers team? We'll see. And then the other interesting series is Cleveland and Toronto. And Toronto tied it up yesterday at 2-2. And again, Cleveland was another one where they got James Harden. They were playing really well. They beat the Knicks. This is finally going to be the year Cleveland makes it to the conference finals. Maybe not. So I think just to the objective outside observer who's an NBA fan, this has been a pretty good playoff so far. You've got competitive games. You have competitive series. Not all of them, of course, but we just told you which ones are. And look, to be fair, I take a lot of shots at the NBA, and I think deservedly so. But the play-in format is sort of wonky and quirky as it is, seems to work. And these playoffs have been good and competitive so far. All right, moving on, NFL draft. So last week, my boy AG and I talked about, who we each wanted our teams to take. I would think, I texted with him. He couldn't come on this week, but I texted with him. He's got to be thrilled. The Cowboys had one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year. I thought, we'll get to the lines in a second. I thought the teams that really nailed the draft this year were the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Ravens. Eagles and the Ravens, no surprise there. They always draft well. I thought the Jets and the Giants were very solid. I thought the Giants did the very adult, smart thing. The Jets, really good until trading up for Cade Klubnik, the quarterback from Clemson. Jets are in no position to be giving away draft picks and trading up for anything with the dearth of talent on that roster. You just don't do it. It's been proven time and time again. It's just bad business to trade up and trade away picks when you're as bad as the Jets and you're trying to add as much talent as you can to the roster. But that's neither here nor there. I think they got the first 4 picks right, and that's probably what's more important. We'll get to that a little bit later. But the Cowboys, they had Caleb Downs, a stud safety from Ohio State, fall into their laps. They did trade up 1 pick to get him, but they didn't give up much to do it, so that made sense. Then they got Malachi Lawrence, the edge rusher from UCF. That was a really good pick. They traded for D. Winters, the linebacker from 49ers, who's a really good, useful player. Who else? Anyway, I just thought that they did, I'm not going to give you every Cowboys pick, but they did a nice job addressing needs with some really talented players on defense. And again, getting Caleb Downs is an absolute coup for the Cowboys. The Eagles, really good draft. The Cole Payton pick, the quarterback out of North Dakota State in the 4th round, is very interesting. He's a very toolsy guy. 6'3", 235, ran like 4.5 40, put up big numbers. Granted, South Dakota State's 1AA, but we've seen guys, obviously, Carson Wentz years ago come out of there and play well at times in the NFL. Trey Lance hasn't really done much in the NFL yet, but is in the NFL. Easton Stick has been a backup in the NFL. So that's 3 quarterbacks currently in the NFL that played at North Dakota State. So as a developmental prospect, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, Howie Roseman, the Eagles GM, just consistently gets stuff done. And, by the way, traded for Jonathan Grenard from the Vikings, the fine edge rusher. So he immediately replaces the loss of Jalen Phillips, who the Panthers overpaid for in free agency. So, yet again, and look, I take no pleasure in giving the Eagles credit for anything, but we're going to be objective here. Howie Roseman's one of the best GMs in the NFL, and he proves it year in and year out by having good drafts and making trades like the one for Jonathan Grenard. And then the Ravens also, I think every mock draft in the world had them taking Vega Ione, the stud guard from Penn State, and of course they did. Then they took 2 big receivers, which has been a big need for them. So they nailed it. The Giants at 5-10, look, they had Arvell Reese fall into their laps, supposedly. People were like, well, they already have such good edge rushers and Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau and Abdul Carter. Well, hold on. They have one really good edge rusher in Brian Burns. Kayvon Thibodeau hasn't done a damn thing since he's been with the Giants. He's hurt a lot, and when he's played, he's given them very little. And Abdul Carter had about as poor a rookie season as one could possibly have, okay, with the off-the-field issues, falling asleep, missing meetings, whatever. Now, could he turn into a really good player? Sure. You would think with Harbaugh there, new coaching staff, he will. But let's pump the brakes on this idea that, why would the Giants take Arvell Reese when they already... No. They don't already have anything. The Giants, again, like the Jets, need as much of an influx of talent as they can get. Plus, even if Thibodeau was good, which he's not, and even if Carter had a good rookie season, which he didn't, you can never have too many pass rushers in the NFL. And by the way, Arvell Reese is far from a proven pass rusher. He's better as an off-the-ball linebacker now than he is as an edge rusher. And he's supremely talented, and we know all of that. So it was a no-brainer pick, really. Now, you could have debated, should they have taken Caleb Downs at 10 and really solidified the defensive side of the ball instead of taking Francis Mooga, the big tackle from Miami? They did bring back Jermaine Illuminor, who actually played well for them at right tackle last year. But he's a veteran. He's getting up there in years. You also can't have too many good offensive linemen, and they could probably move Mayoga to guard this year, or maybe move Illuminor to guard and put Mayoga at tackle. We'll see what they opt to do there. But I thought it was the adult, smart play. Look at what the Ravens have done during Harbaugh's, 20 years there? They almost always have really good offensive lines. And that has long been a sore spot for the Giants now. It goes back to Dave Gettleman. He wanted the hog mollies or whatever it was he said, and he put a ton of resources into the offensive line via either free agency or the draft, and it never worked. They drafted Evan Neal 4 years ago with the 7th pick of the draft. He's unplayable. Started out as a tackle. They moved him to guard. That didn't even work. That didn't work either. But the Ravens always have a good offensive line. So to me, that was a no-brainer pick also. I don't know that it's a no-brainer. Again, you could debate he or Downs. I don't think you could go wrong with either of them. Then they got the cornerback Colton Hood in the 3rd round. That was a steal, a kid out of Miami. Certainly has starter potential. So I thought the Giants did a nice job. Now the Jets, look, I thought David Bailey was the pick at 2. He's the best edge rusher, pass rusher in this draft by far. and he has a track record. He's not a one-hit wonder. He was good at Stanford, great at Texas Tech when he transferred there. The Kenyon Sadiq thing, look, if you ever listen to my show, you know I'm on record as saying I don't like taking tight ends in the first round. I just don't. Again, you can be a Super Bowl contender, a Super Bowl winner, without a great tight end. You cannot be a Super Bowl winner without a great left tackle, great quarterback, one great corner, one great pass rusher. Can't. The Giants won a Super Bowl with Kevin Boss as their tight end. He was a 7th-round pick out of, I believe it was Western Oregon College, that 2007 team. Okay? So, and in 2011, when they won again, they didn't have a great tight end on that team either. So, winning Super Bowls can happen without great tight ends. But, to be fair to the Jets, again, zero talent on offense other than Garrett Wilson. Sadiq ran sub 4.4 guy at 245 pounds and 6'3". He's not going to help you in the run game right away as a blocker, but he should help stretch the field, and he should help be really good with run after catch. So I get it. Again, the Jets need talent at every position. So maybe offensive line was the one where you kind of felt good about their situation. But they need offensive playmakers like nobody's business. So didn't love it. I understand it. And then they traded back into the end of the first round and take Cooper, the wide receiver from the Cooper kid, the wide receiver from Indiana. Then they took D'Angelo Pons in the second round, who's basically an Aaron Glenn clone, 5'9", 185 pounds, feisty as hell, always around the ball, will tackle in the run game, good hands as a corner, a dog in a good way. And look, I'll give the Jets credit. They had a theme. They drafted players from programs where these guys had a ton of success. 2 guys from Indiana won the national championship. Oregon was in the national championship game. Texas Tech was in the playoffs. And these guys, all guys who love football. So I give the Jets credit there. They had a plan. They had a philosophy, finally, for the first time in a long time. They're not just throwing stuff at a board and hoping it sticks. Now, trading up for Cade Klubnik, giving away 2 4th-round picks to move up in the 4th round and get him, don't love it. Where he profiles as a backup at best in the NFL, seemed to me to be silly. You know, I mean, you can tell me, again, Cole Payton was there. I would have taken him. You could have justified that way more because Cole Payton, I think, profiles as a potential starter in the NFL just due to his physical traits. Cade Klubnik is like 6'2", 200 pounds with not a particularly strong arm. So that one didn't make a ton of sense to me. Is it the end of the world? No. And again, the Jets nailed their first 4 picks. So good for them. Now, as far as my lines are concerned, I went into it saying I wanted one of about 5 or 6 different offensive tackles. They took Blake Miller, Balake Miller, from Clemson. 54 starts in college. He's a right tackle. This means the Lions will now move Penei Sewell to left tackle. Fine. He played there in college. Hasn't played it in the pros in several years. Don't think it's an issue. He's such a gifted, talented player that with a full training camp under his belt, playing left tackle should not be an issue at all. Then in the second round, they traded up 6 spots to take Derrick Moore, defensive end out of Michigan. Edge rusher, 10 sacks last year. No problem with it. At first, I didn't love the trade up. Then I understood, look, the Ravens were there at 45. The Lions traded up to 44, 1 spot. Jesse Minter is the Ravens' new coach. He was his defense coordinator when he was in Michigan. He's a Maryland guy. They had their eyes on him. They were probably going to take him. And maybe then the Ravens ended up taking Zion Young, the defensive end out of Missouri, at 45. maybe the Lions didn't like Zion Young and or were nervous that he may not last to 50 because that's where the Lions were originally picking in round 2. So, and they gave up one of their 2 fourth-round picks. They got an extra one as a part of that David Montgomery trade. I didn't hate it. At first glance, I was puzzled. It makes sense to me. I get it. And it was a position of need. And obviously, they did a lot of work on him. He's from Michigan, their own backyard. I will give Brad Holmes and this front office credit. For years and years and years, for whatever reason, the Detroit Lions seem to actively spurn drafting players from Michigan. Where if you look at just the history of Michigan, they put like 8 to 10 guys in the pros almost every year. And the Lions seem to want nothing to do with them. But they took Hutch a few years back. Now we took this Derrick Moore kid. Not to be confused, by the way, and no relation to, this is for real Lions fans now. When Barry Sanders was doing his thing for the Lions, they had 2 backup running backs, Eric Lynch from Grand Valley State, which is a local Michigan school, and Derrick Moore from Northeast Oklahoma. And Derrick Moore used to get vulture touchdowns from Barry Sanders. Barry would get him all the way down to the goal line, and then Wayne Fonts, the Lions coach at the time, would want to take Barry out because they didn't want Barry to get banged around too much, even though Barry could do the Walter Payton and sky up and over the goal line for touchdowns. He didn't want him doing that. They wanted to protect him as much as they could. So they found this dude, Derrick Moore, who was just a battering ram, was running back, and I think literally had like a 95% success rate. Like, they gave him the ball on the 1-yard line, boom, touchdown every single time. So when I hear the name Derrick Moore associated with the Lions, that's what I think of. But in any event, then they took Jimmy Rolder, linebacker, also from Michigan, in the 3rd round. Only started 1 year at Michigan. Guy loves football. Really good tackler. Good size speed combo. 6'3", 235. I think ostensibly will replace Alex Anzalone in some form or fashion. Probably he and Malcolm Rodriguez will kind of be a combination there, I would imagine. So I like that pick. And then the surprise of the draft was getting, is it Kenny Ebney? What is his name now? I'm spacing. I know it's Ebney. Cornerback from Arizona State. I can't find it. Anyway, I think it's Kenny Ebney. Anyway, really, similar to D'Angelo Pons, the corner from Indiana that the Jets took. 5'9", 188 pounds, not the biggest guy, but a guy who will tackle, who's sticky in coverage. Had 5 interceptions combined the last 2 years. Guy who just loves to play football. Played outside a lot in college. Played some slot, but last year played primarily on the outside. Look, again, you can't have too many good D-backs in the NFL. Can't. So Lions will figure out where he fits best. Is it going to be outside? Is it going to be in the slot? But I mean, again, also look at the insane amount of injuries the Lions have suffered the last 2 years on defense, particularly in the secondary. I mean, at one point last year, you had 4 backups at all 4 positions playing on a Monday night game against Tampa Bay, which, surprisingly, the Lions won, and those guys all played well. But, and I chronicled it on the last show, I think, or 2 shows ago. They brought back good depth in Rockison and Avonte Maddox and brought in a guy like Roger McCreary, who's a pretty good slot player. But again, you can never have too many good defensive backs in this league. So love that pick there. Did I love them trading up in the 5th round to draft a wide receiver from Kentucky? No, I did not. I thought Greg Dortch was going to be the Khalif Raymond replacement. But look, if this kid turns out to be a stud or at least a really good player, obviously I'll have no problem with it. And I got to be honest, never seen the kid play. I read up about him. Sounds like he's explosive. He's a sub 4.5 guy, runs in the mid 4.4s, has that sort of Deebo Samuel type of build, 5'11", 205, more like a running back than a wide receiver, but runs hard, can play special teams apparently, both cover and returning kicks. So we'll see. And I mean, look, I'm not married to Greg Dortch. He was a 1-year deal anyway. So this kid comes in and beats him out in training camp and is, gives them something in the return game and gives them something for all 4 phases of special teams. Is a really good gunner or is a good kickoff guy. Making tackles, great. Fine. That's what 5th-round picks should be. All right. We end the show with baseball. So first, the very surprising move over the weekend where the Red Sox, who were off to a miserable start, no question, but after a game that they won 17-1, decided to fire Alex Cora. Now, obviously, not right after that game. The decision had obviously already been made. They announced it after beating whomever it was, Baltimore, I think, 17-1. But Alex Cora, who has a World Series under his belt, who has a very good winning percentage career as a manager, longtime manager of the Red Sox, had to take a little hiatus after the whole Astros sign-stealing incident. But Craig Breslow, who was I would say mediocre at best career pitcher in Major League Baseball, is the new GM for the Red Sox. Boy, does he come off like an arrogant prick. I mean, wow. I mean, Trevor Story, who's, I guess, kind of the de facto captain of the Red Sox, he's probably the most tenured veteran on that roster, very unhappy about it. Most of the players on that team very unhappy about it. They got rid of Devers last year because they brought in Bregman to play third base and replace him, and he got pissed off. And yes, Devers did not handle it well. And then they traded him to San Francisco. They seem to have gotten not much from him for San Francisco. By the way, you can date all the way back to the Mookie Betts trade where they didn't get anything for him either. One of the best players in the sport. Because John Henry, I guess, didn't want to pay him because he wants to focus on his soccer team for whatever reason. And then you let Alex Bregman walk, and you trade for this kid from Milwaukee who's hitting like 160. And nobody's on the Red Sox is hitting, very similar to the Mets situation. It's not a good look. I mean, it looks like they do not know what they're doing. And so you're going to blame Alex Cora for this? Seems petty. And the players are not happy about it at all. Now, they have won. They did win yesterday. Let's take a quick look at that. But look, they've played very poorly. They haven't pitched well. They haven't hit. I mean, they've done nothing well so far. Even Garrett Crochet, their stud, had a terrible outing a couple outings ago where he gave up like 10 runs or 8 runs or something like that in like 4 innings. So I get it. They're off to a really rough start. But again, they're playing the Orioles. They played the Orioles over the weekend. And then they won again yesterday. So they're 11-17. I mean, it's 6 games under 500. So all of this to say is that now an extremely accomplished manager is available. And so now we'll segue over to the Mets situation, where they just got swept over the weekend by the Colorado Rockies. One of the biggest jokes in all of Major League Baseball. In fact, I would argue that the Rockies shouldn't even be in existence. It's idiotic to have a team play in Denver. That stadium is ridiculous. It's a completely different sport in that stadium. The ball flies out of there all over the place. The outfield is cavernous. Bloop hits fall in for hits constantly. It's a joke. And yet the Mets, at home, with 2 of their supposed best pitchers on the mound going in the series, in Freddie Peralta and Nolan McLean, got swept, scored 4 runs in 3 games against the Rockies pitching staff, one of the worst pitching staffs in Major League Baseball. Michael Lorenzen on Friday night, who came into this series with a 7.7 ERA, the Mets scored 1 run against him. They scored 2 runs against the Rockies bullpen, but of course couldn't get over the hump and at least tie the game and send it into extra innings. And then Bad weather on Saturday forced a doubleheader yesterday. Mets scored 1 run in the first game, courtesy of a solo home run by Tyrone Taylor off the spectacularly mediocre Jose Quintana, who dominated the Mets. And then the Rockies bullpen came in and cleaned up and then got shut out in the second game. Shut out. And in the first game, had the bases loaded, 1 out in the first inning. Quintana on the ropes. Who's batting fifth? Who's coming up with the bases loaded? Oh, Marcus Semien. He of the 210 batting average and 2 RBIs or whatever it is. Batting fifth because there's a lefty on the mound. See, I love these managers that do this. They love to do this lefty-righty matchup. If the guy can't fucking hit, it doesn't matter if there's a fucking lefty on the mound or a righty on the mound. What have you seen, Carlos Mendoza, from Marcus Semien that would lead you to believe he should be batting in the middle of the order? And don't tell me his track record. He sucked the last 2 years for Texas. And he's 35. You think it's going to get better? Look, the Mets are a complete and utter disgrace right now. From top to bottom, from the owner, Steve Cohen, to the general manager, president of baseball operations, David Stearns, to the manager. And look, is Mendoza the problem? No, he's not the problem, but he's not the problem either. And batting Marcus Semien fifth is one of the reasons why. His lineup construction is beyond idiotic. Now, I don't know if that's coming from above. I wouldn't be surprised if it is. This is the insidiousness of analytics and how it's ruining the sport, where the managers are basically completely neutered and not allowed to make decisions of their own anymore. And Gary Cohen pretty much hinted as much yesterday on the Mets telecast. But, I mean, again, sloppy play, bad base running, poor fielding. Although, again, when you're playing guys out of position constantly, I don't know what else you expect. And again, I'm sorry, okay? I'm going to pat myself on the back again. You heard me in February say the Mets were hoping. They didn't have a plan. David Stearns did not have a plan. They were hoping Bo Bichette could make the transition from short to third. They were hoping Polanco could make the transition from second to first. They were hoping Luis Robert Jr. would recapture his form from 2023. They were hoping Devin Williams would be the pitcher that he was in Milwaukee and not the disaster that he was with the Yankees last year. Hope, 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 hope. Hoping Semien would somehow miraculously be a better hitter at age 35, coming off 2 significantly down years in Texas. Shocking, none of it's worked. None of it has worked. It has been a mess. And I don't want to hear, oh, well, Luis Robert Jr. has played pretty well when he plays. The Mets keeping him in bubble wrap because he's had all these leg injuries over the course of his career. So why would you trade for a guy if that's your plan? If your plan is to limit him to 120 games, what are you doing? It's not like you have a suitable replacement for him. Tyrone Taylor stinks. I don't care that he hit a solo home run yesterday. He's not any good. And he's been here for 3 years. You haven't seen enough of the Tyrone Taylor experience? Yes, he's a good defensive outfielder. He's a terrible hitter. I'm sorry. Seems like a nice guy. He's just not a very good hitter. And this is what incompetence does. So, I mean, is Tyrone Taylor the problem here? No. Is it the fact that Lindor sucked to start the season and then got hurt? Is this fact that Soto missed 2 weeks? Bo Bichette hasn't done a damn thing? Those are the major issues. I get it. But then, see, when things start to go wrong, every move is under the microscope. And having a plan in place where Luis Robert Jr. is only going to play 120 games because you somehow feel comfortable with Tyrone Taylor, it's emblematic of the overall poor approach to building a roster. And the Cohen-Stearns thing seems to make no sense because Steve Cohen is the richest owner in baseball. Steve Cohen wants to make a big splash. David Stearns came from Milwaukee, where they didn't have a lot of money to spend. David Stearns wants to show the world how smart he is by turning over his roster every year, because that's what he had to do in Milwaukee. See, because in Milwaukee, anytime you have a player who's about to get who's good and is about to get paid, they either trade them, like they did with Freddie Peralta, for top prospects, which the Mets were stupid to do, because Freddie Peralta, by the way, is barely a number 3 starter because he can't ever pitch into the 6th, or God forbid, forget about the 7th inning. He can't even make it out of the 6th inning. And they gave up 2 of their best prospects for him, including Jet Williams, who's one of their best position player prospects. And so, or they let them go to free agency. That's what the Brewers, that was their blueprint. Well, the Mets don't need to be run like that because you have an owner that's got more money than God. So the pairing of that kind of a GM with this kind of an owner seems to make no sense. And you're seeing it now. Yeah, the Mets spent money this offseason, but like Polanco got a 2-year contract. Bichette's is essentially a 1-year deal. He's making a ton of money this year. He's making $40 million. You know, Devin Williams making $15 million a year. For a closer, that's pretty much average now. They lost Edwin Diaz over $3 million to the Dodgers. That seemed to make no sense. But so it seems to be a very incongruous pairing between the owner and the GM. And then, look, I feel bad for Mendy. Mendy seems like a fine human and a good dude. And I think he knows baseball. But again, it reflects poorly on him when guys continue to make mental mistakes. And what are the Mets doing with their young talent? Beatty, Vientos, Benj, it's his rookie year. I'm not going there yet. And Francisco Alvarez. Those 3 guys are supposed to be kind of cornerstone guys, young, controllable position players. Well, they've jerked both Beatty and you can add Mauricio into that mix a little bit, although not really because he hasn't played enough. But, you know, Vientos was a big part of what happened in 2024. He had 27 home runs. He had an 8-something OPS, and he had a monster playoffs. Yeah, I get it. He had a down year last year. But again, part of it, very poorly constructed roster, right? He struggled a little bit. They bailed on him right out of the gates at third base, started moving him all around. They're doing the same then they replaced him with Beatty. Then Beatty would go into a slump, and then they would bounce him and then put Vientos back in there. I don't know where they get this idea that Beatty is Ben Zobrist 2.0, but it's insane. He should only play third base. Vientos should only really be a DH probably, but they have to DH Soto now because he's hurt. So it's just an ill-conceived roster. And I think what they've done by moving Beatty around all over the place, right field, left field, first base, third base, is stunt his development. He's had an awful year with the bat so far. Vientos was hot for about a minute to start the season. He's gone ice cold. He seems like he's completely in his head. He had that ridiculous running through the stop sign the other night against the Twins. So, look, and the other thing is, the Mets are like 30, so they're 9-19 right now. They finished last year. The Mets are, since June 21st of last year, the Mets are 27 games under 500. Let me repeat that. Since June 19th of last year, they are 27 games under 500. So this is not just an outlier, bad start, 28 games into the season now. Okay, Mendoza has overseen all of this, and they fired all of his coaches, including the first base coach, who's one guy who did his job well last year, where the Mets were one of the best teams at stolen bases, largely due in part to the first base coach. But they let him go to where? Oh, the Braves. That's smart. By the way, the Braves are 20-9. And here, all you need to know about the difference between the Braves and the Mets is the Braves' stud catcher, Drake Baldwin, is playing like a stud, and the Mets' supposed stud catcher, Francisco Alvarez, is playing like garbage. And I don't want to hear about his 4 home runs, okay? He has 7 RBIs. He's striking out all over the place, swinging at everything. Clearly, you can see he's trying to do too much. I like Francisco Alvarez. He cares. He works hard. But he's trying to overcompensate for the rest of the team, completely underachieving. And you saw Bo Bichette yesterday, head down in the dugout well after the game had ended. Look, I don't mind that. Shows me the guy cares at least. And I have no issues with Bo Bichette from that perspective. But at some point, you got to hit, dude. I mean, you got to start hitting. And he's never a big power hitter to begin with. He had 18 home runs last year. But can you drive in some runs at some point? I mean, he's hitting 220 with 10 RBIs in 19 games. And he got like 4 of those RBIs in one game. I mean, the Mets have been shut out 5 times already. 5 times. They haven't even played 20 games yet. They've been shut out 5 times. And then even McClain looked great for 4 innings yesterday, or 3 innings. Struggled in the 4th, struggled in the 5th. Kept them in the game. I mean, it's the Rockies. The Mets had a 9-game homestand start at the beginning of this week against the Twins, the Rockies, and the Nationals, which starts tomorrow. I said 6-3 minimum. At best now, they're going to go 5-4. They're going to have to sweep the Nationals to do it, and that's not going to happen. And so today's an off day. People speculating, is this the day they're going to fire Mendoza? As of this recording, it's 6:11 p.m. on Monday night. Doesn't look like it. Again, he's not the whole problem by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not either. And again, 27 games under 500 now for, we'll say middle of June, July, August, September, October, pretty much all of April. So for about 5.5 months now, the Mets have been the worst team in baseball, and Carlos Mendoza has been the manager for all of it. So you want to inject some life into this team and some hope into the fan base, I think it's time you move on from him and you hire Alex Cora. All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Jamal About Sports. Check us out on Apple Podcasts. Check us out on Spotify Podcasts, Podbean, and if you want to see my handsome face, check out my YouTube channel, also Jamal About Sports. And until next time, peace out.